If the snake has no fangs and venom, it changes its diet. If you take away the wattle from the white bellbird, then well, you get the idea. But what about bees? Bees are known for having a stinger. If you suddenly take it away from a bee, it simply wouldn't be able to survive. But vulture bees gradually gave up their stinger, and that's what happened to them. At first glance, vulture bees are not much different from ordinary bees. I mean, their bodies look similar: eyes, legs, wings. Vulture bees also live in colonies, produce honey, and eat meat. No kidding. Bees eat meat. Vulture bees never touch buds or blossoms. Instead, they get sugar from the fruits and nectaries of some plants. As for protein, they get it from the rotting meat that bees carry into their hive. Although that sounds like a very, very bad idea. Just think about it. Usually insects try to get rid of their dead to avoid causing a pandemic in the hive, and here we have rotting meat. But vulture bees have their secrets. They treat the meat in a special way, then store it in small pot-like containers. Can we say they cook it in a special way? Well, researchers have different opinions on that, but essentially bees store meat until it's time to feed the larva. Yes, as I said, vulture bees are in many ways similar to their vegetarian relatives in the way they look, honey that they make, and their colony size. There is a clear hierarchy in their hives, which includes the queen bee, drones, worker bees, and the young bees they take care of. Everyone in the colony has a certain job to do. A typical bee organization. Like other bee species that live in hives, vulture bees sometimes find their home overcrowded. Then the new queen seizes power, and the old one gathers followers and moves to another place. That is quite a regular bee behavior. But to switch to a meat diet, these bees simply had to change. You can't live your whole life collecting nectar and one day develop an appetite for, a steak? This requires some evolutionary mechanisms, and it looks like the bees have decided to give up the stinger. Perhaps they had to sacrifice it to get something like jaws. Also, the vulture bees have a special tooth. Some sources even say several of them, and they help bite flesh. I see what you're thinking. It's not enough to eat food like that. You also need to digest it somehow. And when it comes to rotting meat, few creatures can do it. But we'll get back to that a bit later. After all, the bees also need to somehow carry the meat to the hive. Most bees have basket-like structures on their hind legs. Usually bees carry pollen in them. But vulture bees use a smaller basket of a slightly different structure to carry meat from the carcass to the hive. That is, these insects literally change the structure of their legs to make it more convenient to handle meat. That's what I call a change of profession. But how do they digest rotten meat? Most creatures who decide to eat something like this risk getting food poisoning. That's the best case scenario. The reason lies in corpses that are full of microbes locked in a territorial battle, which results in producing a lot of toxins. Deadly toxins. However, vulture bees have evolved a unique community of microorganisms in their tiny guts, that is the microbiome. When scientists examined these unusual insects, they found that vulture bees are full of acid-loving bacteria. These bacteria are similar to those found in feathered vultures, hyenas, and other carrion-eating animals. One of the bacteria found in vulture bees is lactobacillus, which is common for many fermented foods, like sourdough. The microbiome also contains carnobacterium, associated with flesh digestion. In short, these bees have everything they need to eat corpses. To be honest, I'm starting to feel quite uneasy. Gotta ask Steve to find out if these bees can attack humans. In the meantime, let's talk about the stinger. Vulture bees abandoned the main bee weapon. Did it make them stronger? The bee's stinger evolved originally for combat between bees of different hives. The barbs evolved later as an anti-mammal defense. In one of my previous videos, I mentioned that the bee stinger gets stuck when it penetrates, say, the human body, all because of these barbs. At the same time, it can penetrate the chitinous plates of another bee's exoskeleton and retract safely. But the stinger's not designed only to pierce the enemy or its victim. It's also used to inject apitoxin, the bee venom, into the victim, which is accompanied by the release of alarm pheromones. Releasing these pheromones near the hive or just next to other bees can attract them like an SOS signal. Can you imagine how other bees would react in such a situation? Of course they'll exhibit defensive behavior, which in bee language means attack the enemy until he flees or dies. The pheromones don't dissipate nor wash off quickly, and if a target gets into the water, the bees will resume their attack as soon as the target is back on the surface. Well, it seems like a stinger has many benefits, except perhaps for the fact that bees that sting mammals are doomed. But other than that, it's really useful. I don't know what the downsides could be here. So vulture bees can't sting their enemies, but that doesn't make them harmless. I don't know how a creature that eats meat can be called harmless, especially since vulture bees can bite. Yeah, just like lions or crocodiles. I'll give you a few seconds to imagine a bee with a crocodile head. So some bee species can even bite humans. Despite the lack of a stinger, vulture bees put their jaws and special teeth to good use. And when I say good use, I mean the bites are really painful. Special secretions on the jaws of the bees cause blisters on the skin. These blisters turn into painful sores, so ew. But you know what surprised me more than biting meat-eating bees? All bees used to be carnivorous. Scientists say that about 100 or 120 million years ago, the common ancestor of all modern bees was carnivorous. It's believed it was a predatory wasp from the Crabradonidae family. It attacked other insects, stung them, and carried their carcasses to its offspring. But as time passed, something happened. And over the past 80 million years, the bees have become devoted vegetarians. Of all the bee species, only 3 now prefer meat. How come the ancestors of modern bees changed their diet? Quite an interesting question. I've already said, when you're an insect, you can't simply decide you're beginning a new life starting today. Scientists have theories how that happened. My favorite one says the ancient wasps diligently hunted insects and brought them to their larvae. But these insects were all covered in pollen because, well, that's what they ate. This went on for a very, very long time, and finally the larvae, apparently, well, grew to like it. Imagine these larvae telling their parents they'll only eat pollen from now on. A teenage rebellion from the Mesozoic era. But so far, scientists aren't 100% certain about what happened millions of years ago, but they have strange, really strange facts. How do you like wasps that ate dinosaurs? Well, something like that. Back in 2011, scientists examined several titanosaur eggs about 70 million years old. Titanosaurs are these big fellas. Their eggs were also large, and scientists discovered something weird in one of them: 8 tiny structures shaped like sausages? Steve! Sausages and dinosaurs? Really? Well, these sausages turned out to be fossilized cocoons of ancient insects, which look a lot like the cocoons of modern wasps. The researchers suggested the ancient egg cracked open, the smell attracted scavengers like some kind of crickets, and then the crickets attracted wasps. After eating, they spun their cocoons inside a rotting egg. However, who knows? Maybe the wasps were the first to appear near the egg. Maybe they ate a baby dinosaur. Or maybe they cracked open the egg. All right, this sounds insane. Though I suddenly realized that I haven't addressed the most important question yet. If vulture bees make honey from meat, what does it taste like? To be honest, I haven't tried it yet, but those who have describe it as a dark, thick, very sticky substance rich in protein. Unlike common bees, vultures don't produce excess honey. That is, they make exactly as much as they need. So consider yourself lucky if you got to try it. The taste of this rare honey is described as intense, smoky, salty, or simply sweet. I have no idea what that means. At the same time, it's considered not as sweet as sugar. Actually, for people, it can be something of a delicacy. A unique delicacy.
Oh, God, it's so good. So good. So good and tasty.
What about safety? Can we actually eat this honey, or is it a terrible poison that can kill anyone who's, well, not a bee? After all these bacteria in the dead bodies are no joke. While judging by the information I came across, the honey of vulture bees contains no substances potentially dangerous to humans. That's a great food. Unlike other honey, which seems to be completely ordinary, except for one small detail. It's radioactive. Scientists testing batches of American honey were surprised to discover traces of nuclear tests conducted in the 1950s and 1960s. More precisely, it was an isotope of cesium-137, and its concentration in some samples was 100 times higher than in other foods. Don't panic yet, this is not a health risk. The researchers stress that the amount of cesium-137 found in American honey is well below what is considered harmful. For reference, the most radioactive honey tested during the study came from Florida and contained 19.1 becquerels per kilogram. At the same time, the cutoff for food safety is at 1,200 becquerels per kilogram. You get it, right? You need to eat a lot of honey to get any negative consequences. Of course, radioactive honey isn't harmful to bees either. Seems like these amazing insects decided not to stop there. Rotting meat, honey containing cesium-137, they started eating human tears. In the next video, we'll continue to study the diet of bees and something else. See you later.